cut off, so we're coming back and going over some of what was covered there to fill in that blank, and put it with the part of the video that was recorded. And so we'll have a dialogue back and forth and go over some of it.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much, Matthew. So what we'll do is we'll just read each section recited from the text and then discuss it. So Matt has some good notes to refer to, and I can make comments from what we had said before as best we can. So we're beginning with the King of Aspiration Prayers. Samantabhadra's aspiration of good actions, Zangcho Munlam, from the Gandharvaya chapter of the Avatamsaka Sutra. So this sutra is a very thick sutra. It's one of the most involved and comprehensive sutras of all the sutras that are included in the Kangyur. So, and this Gandharvaya chapter is this aspiration of good actions. So the good actions is virtue, developing virtue. So what we're trying to do, what Samantabhadra here is describing, are the intentions, the aspirations for virtue. So this is the Bodhisattva Samantabhadra, and so the Munlam, the word Munlam, is a word that means prayers, actually aspiration prayers. So the aspirations, as I said, are for us to want to do good. And there's many, many aspirations that we can do, many different aspiration prayers. But of all those, this is the most supreme. This is the king of those, of all the aspiration prayers. And the prayers are remembrances that we do for ourselves to set our motivation so that we are focused on what we're going to do, what our intention is, to remind ourselves on a routine basis what our wheels on the track are, so to speak. So this is where we begin.
Beautiful. So do you want to jump right into to number one, the prostration?
Well, let's first talk about the translator's homage.
Okay.
So the translator's homage is, we say, to homage Manjushri the youthful. So Manjushri is the Bodhisattva Manjushri, and is considered to be youthful because he's like a young student who is gathering all this wisdom, all this knowledge, all this experience of phenomenal nature, but also in the light of absolute nature. That he has the wisdom of the Prajnaparamita together with the wisdom and the experiences that happen in phenomenal nature. So in this way, he represents total wisdom, total understanding, total being able to comprehend what we are immersed in as human beings. So the translator here pays homage to this, to Manjushri the youthful. Then the text begins with the 7 preliminaries for purifying the mind. So do you have any comment right now, Matt?
No, not yet.
Okay. So our aspiration is to emulate the bodhisattvas, for us to learn from the bodhisattvas that they are part of us, they are human beings, and reflecting the highest qualities of being a human being. So we're trying to emulate the bodhisattvas on our path to become Buddha, to become enlightened. So we want to emulate the Buddhas as well, to become Buddha. So this is what we are doing again. So so the 7 preliminaries for purifying the mind. So these 7 preliminaries are the same as the opening, in the opening prayers, when we recite the 7-limb prayer. So the seven limb prayer in our prayer book on pages 10 and 11 in this particular book is another translation of what we're about to do here. And this seven limb prayer is like a tree, and the tree has these seven limbs. So all the different prayers, all the different activities that we engage in, all the different sadhanas are hung on these seven limbs. So that's what is being described here in this introduction. So the first of them is the prostration. So the prostration is like we're taking refuge, and to take refuge, as a matter of speaking, we're like surrendering ourselves, surrendering our individual body, our individual intellectualization to for the sake of our spiritual body. So we're prostrating ourselves in the process of doing this, and this is humbling us to be able to control the ego, because the ego wants to take over and wants to do things for its own means of its survival and so on. So we are resting the ego and focusing our energy, our attention on the prostration, the refuge of the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas, the Dharma and the Sangha. So this is what we are taking a prostration. The prostration is actually a physical activity where we are standing in front of the lineage tree. We are standing in front of our altar, in front of our place of worship, or in our shrine room, whatever, and we use the 5-point prostration where our hands touch the ground, our knees touch the ground, and then we slide and we come forward and our forehead touches the ground, and then we're gathering the blessings back and we stand up, and we're doing this prostration as a means to be able to surrender our physical body, intellectual mind for the sake of our spiritual mind. So we begin the prostration and we recite these prayers. So I'll recite this part. It says, "To all the Buddhas, the lions of the human race, in all directions of the universe, through past and present and future, to every single one of you, I bow in homage. Devotion fills my body, speech, and mind. Through the power of this prayer, aspiring to good action, all the victorious ones appear, vivid here before my mind, and I multiply my body as many times as atoms in the universe, each one bowing in prostration to the Buddhas." So the first line is, "To all Buddhas, all the Buddhas, the lions of the human race." So this is the story of human beings. This is not beings who are external to us or out in space or out in some heaven or wherever. This is the human story. And these Buddhas are the lions, the most courageous of human beings, who have been able to say, by everyday activities of my physical body, my intellectual mind, I'm able to kind of put on hold. I'm able to suspend for a period of time and use the courage of my energy and my focus to develop awakenness, to be able to awake, to be able to recognize that we are human beings and how we can complete ourselves as human beings. So, to all the Buddhas, the lions of the human race, is how we begin this. And it says, in all directions of the universe, through the past, present, and future. So, in all directions of the universe means everywhere that this is all true, everywhere through the cosmos, everywhere that we can see in phenomenal nature. And the 10 directions imply the 4 directions of the compass, the east, the south, the west, and the north, together with the intermediate. So it would be the southeast, the southwest, the northwest and the northeast. Those are 8. So those are the 8 directions of the compass, plus up and down. So these are all directions of the universe, of the past, present, and future. So these are the 3 times, the past, present, and future. So all this all comes together as being here right now. As we are here, we are everywhere. As we are here now, there is no other time but now. And all the past, the present, has all come together. So it says, to every single one of you, I bow in homage, because every single one of you is potential Buddha, has the potential to be Buddha. We all have Buddha nature within us. And as we've said many times, it's obscured, it's blocked up with our emotions and our confusions and so on. So our endeavor is to be able to open that up. But we recognize that we have this Buddha nature. And this is a quality of a precious human being that recognizes that sees it within ourselves and sees it in all other beings. We certainly aren't completed. We're certainly not perfect, but we are taking the initial steps to be able to recognize that, to be able to develop that. And this devotion for us to do that fills my body, speech, and mind. This devotion to carry on, this devotion through our courage, through our intelligence, through our having the cultivation, to have the transformation, is all brought through this devotion of my body, speech, and mind to enable us to do that. And as we talked about in the past couple of weeks, we were talking about the 8 great bodhisattvas. And in order for us to be able to accomplish this transformation, devotion to the practice, devotion to the teacher, devotion to the Dharma, all comes to bear. This devotion that we need to have for each other, to help each other in every way that we can. So this devotion is filling my body in order that I may be able to do that. So through the power of this prayer, this remembering this, we're aspiring to good action. We're aspiring to devotion. We want to have devotion. We want to have devotion. We want to have virtue is what we are trying to develop. The virtue of benefiting all beings. So all the victorious ones appear, all the Buddhas, all the bodhisattvas. So everything that we see is permeated, is pervaded with all the virtue, with all the truth, with all the Buddhas and bodhisattvas and all the qualities that they bring. We recognize that all the victorious ones appear, those who have gone through this process and have been able to purify themselves and come to these realizations. So all this is vivid here before my mind. So I'm recognizing this, I'm seeing this through my explorations, through my recitations of the practices, through my contemplation of the meaning of the practices, and through the meditation, the transcendence of myself actually becoming these beings, recognizing this true nature within ourselves. So vivid before my mind. And I multiply my body as many times as atoms in the universe. So my body is a composite of many, many, many different things, many different tissues and substances and molecules and atoms and all that. And we visualize that we are all part of this phenomenal nature, that goes out to endless space and so on. And I'm multiplying my body as many times as there are atoms in the universe. So I'm visualizing I'm all part of this, and all this is part of who I am. We're doing this all individually for ourselves and recognizing this. So this prostration prayer is helping us to stabilize that in our minds. And then it says, each one bowing in prostration to the Buddhas. So all these beings, all these having the same goal here of prostrating ourselves, of taking refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and Sangha, surrendering our ordinary body, speech, and mind for the benefit of all beings through our meditation on our spirituality.
Yeah, and some of the group members earlier were bringing up, uh, like with this imagery of the atoms and boundless of space, the idea of the interconnectedness of all things, and with us, with all other things in existence, which is I think, yeah, a powerful idea. And it was making me think at the time too that it's I think, for me at least, a good thing to keep in mind also as I'm building like the bodhicitta practices and the loving kindness and compassion, and uh with the imagining beings as my mother, but also the almost like we're all part of the same body as well, like with the interconnectedness of where it lacks the separation. I think is a cool idea, and can be practically applied in that setting as well.
Yes, absolutely. So, we're all made of that cosmic dust, as we have referred to many times, and so on, and seeing that, and the energy that is between all those substances, between all those atoms, and so on. The energy of that it pervades us as well. So, realizing all of that. Yes, thank you.
You had mentioned that if we know one Buddha, really the Buddha nature, then we know all the Buddhas. I believe you had said earlier too, which I jotted down, which stuck with me as well. It's a similar idea, but yeah.
Yes, all these qualities that we have are all the Buddhas share, all the enlightened ones share. And we talk about bodhicitta, the loving kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity that all these beings have, and not necessarily just in Buddhist tradition, but the Christians, the Jews, the Hindus, the Taoists, the Muslims, whatever tradition, the humanists, whatever tradition, at the core of the true nature, regardless of what their religious tradition is, at the core of this is the bodhicitta and all these other qualities of virtue and so on like that. So when we say that if we know one Buddha, we're knowing all the Buddhas, that what is happening within ourselves is the basis for all the different activities that the Buddhas engage in. So they may be doing these different things, and we can do limitless things, but we're doing it all with the same qualities of bodhicitta, of this holy enlightened mind, this bodhicitta. So yes, thank you. So if the people that are watching this right now, if you have any questions about this, please don't hesitate to write in YouTube, or even better than that would be to write in our email. And our email address is buddhapracticestudy@gmail.com. So, and we'll be more than glad to respond to whatever comments you have, or whatever whatever questions you have. And if you want to be part of our Zoom when we do this in real time, we can give you the link and the times that we do this, and you're welcome to join us for that. So, but please send a request in order that we can acknowledge that and send you the information. So just to review again, so this prostration is taking this refuge in this. So it's a very active process in which we are engaging in. It's not something that just comes to us automatically. It's something that we choose to do, and we have to commit to the process. There is a process, and there are levels. It's a gradation of levels that we go through. And sometimes we view them all together, but to be able to appreciate them, we look at them one built onto another, and that we can continue this. And if there's a falling back, if we lose track of where we are, it's a repeatable process that we can come back and we can start where we left off and build ourselves back up to where we lost track. So this is part of the human process, and this is a wonderful thing that we have this to be able to do this. This is all part of the Buddha's training, the training of Shakyamuni Buddha and all the great masters that came after Buddha Shakyamuni. So the next of the 7 preliminaries for purifying the mind is the offerings, or are the offerings. So I'm going to read these 5 stanzas right now. It says, "In every atom preside as many Buddhas as there are atoms, and around them all their bodhisattva heirs. And so I imagine them filling completely the entire space of reality. Saluting them with an endless ocean of praise, with the sounds of an ocean of different melodies, I sing of the Buddha's noble qualities and praise all those who have gone to perfect bliss. To every Buddha I make offerings of the loveliest flowers, of beautiful garlands, of music and perfumed ointments, the best of parasols, the brightest lamps and finest incense. To every Buddha I make offerings, exquisite garments and the most fragrant scents, powdered incense, heaped as high as Mount Meru, arranged in perfect symmetry. Then the vast and unsurpassable offerings, inspired by my devotion to all the Buddhas and moved by the power of my faith in good actions, I prostrate and offer to all you victorious ones." So these offerings we are doing as a means of stabilizing our mindfulness of this Buddha nature that we have within ourselves. And through this, we're able to help other beings through the energy that we are manifesting, that they will be inspired to do this as well and to sustain their endeavor to be able to make these offerings and to do this. So these offerings are first of material things, of food, of objects, of food, I said food, of light, of candles, of water, of music, all these different offerings that we're doing to inspire that Buddha nature that is within us. All these Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, all these enlightened ones are within us. So we're making these offerings to help us to remember that, to stabilize that, and to saying that all these mundane things we're ready to give to you in order that you may have sustenance to be able to have the strength to be able to help us to be able to recognize our true nature, what that true nature is. So here in this first stanza, it says, "In every atom preside as many Buddhas as there are atoms." So many atoms, countless atoms within our physical body, so many atoms all around us. All this is all made up of atoms, and that's how many Buddhas there are, many enlightened ones, many awakened beings. And this awakenedness is the mind of the Buddha that is all pervasive, that is everywhere, it's all pervading, and that it encompasses absolute wisdom, but also encompasses the realization, the truth of the relative, that there is the relative and the absolute. We live in this relative nature. We're temporarily involved in this phenomenal nature in order that we may recognize this absolute nature, which to us as ordinary human beings is incomprehensible, is inexpressible, is non-dual. we can't find the words to explain it, but we have the experience of that through our meditation. And this is what we are trying to develop, is to become the embodiment of this, to be able to help all beings. So one analogy is like the sun. The sun has ignited its energy and is just radiating light and heat to all beings, and without any expectation of anything coming back to it. It is just radiating this light. So this is what we are trying to do. And so it says, in every atom preside as many Buddhas as there are atoms. So in every atom preside as many Buddhas as there are atoms. So we're seeing this. And around them, all their bodhisattva heirs. So what that means is like the children of the Buddha. So the children of the Buddha would be the bodhisattvas, the male and female bodhisattvas, but also the practitioners and also the yogis and the yoginis, those who are on the path to become Buddha and are going through all these stages and so on. So we are heirs. In other words, we're receiving the benefit, the blessings of the Buddhas through these different practices and prayers, etc., that we accomplish, that we're able to attain, that we're able to recognize within ourselves. So this is what's surrounding all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. And so I imagine them filling completely the entire space of reality. So this entire space of reality is this phenomenal nature as we know it, as we experience it, but recognizing that it is all temporary. It's all a figment of our imagination. It's all a construct of appearances that we as human beings are interpreting as all these things. The essence of what it is, we can experience through our meditation, but to be able to qualify that or quantify it by saying, is this, that, or the other thing, we don't have that ability to be able to do that. But yet we are aspiring to be able to do that through the path of virtue. So we saluting them with an endless ocean of praise. So we are recognizing that that we will continue this process by announcing our praise of them, how wonderful this is. This is supporting our mindfulness of this, that we're repeating this over and over again to ourselves to stabilize our mindfulness of this and within ourselves. These beings aren't somewhere out there and we're going to appease them, or we're not going to say, oh, please, help me, send me whatever I think I need. It's remembering that this is all within ourselves and that we are coming to recognize ourselves as this true nature so that we can actualize this bodhicitta. We can actualize the mind of the Buddhas and so on like that. So saluting them with an endless ocean of praise. So our offerings are made up of vocalizations, of attention, of energy, of physical things. So all these objects, all these things are what we're making offerings because they help us to recognize this Buddha nature. It says, with sounds of an ocean of different melodies. So all the different languages, all the different melodies that we can use, all the different prayers and all the different mantras that we recite of all the different Buddhas and Bodhisattvas and so on there's so many of them, and it's with all this ocean of their different melodies that we are aligning ourselves, we are harmonizing with the vibration of all these enlightened beings. So it says, I sing of the Buddha's noble qualities. So this again is we're remembering, we're bringing to mind, we're creating the mindfulness, the understanding, and the comprehension of what this virtue is, of what it is to be Buddha. And I praise all those who have gone to perfect or to perfect bliss, to for the perfect bliss, this perfect union of realization of being a complete human being, or to perfect this bliss within our lives, that we can do that we achieve these levels. And at a very high level comes this bliss, this awareness, this wakenness of peace. So we're praising all of that to go into perfect bliss. So this is again the offerings. So it continues in the third stanza. It says, "To every Buddha I make offerings." So as one Buddha, to all the Buddhas, I'm making this offering. So there might be a particular Buddha on which we are focusing this because of the activity that that particular Buddha is engaged in, and we're trying to bring awareness to ourselves of what that activity is, so we can strengthen that activity within ourselves. But we're doing this when we make these offerings, we're making the offerings to all the Buddhas for all these activities. So we're making offerings of mundane things here, as it says, of the loveliest flowers, of beautiful garlands, of music and perfumed ointments, the best of parasols, the brightest lamps and finest incense. To every Buddha I make offerings, exquisite garments, the most fragrant scents, powdered incense, heaped as high as Mount Meru, arranged in a perfect symmetry. So these are all human things. These are all appearances. These are things that we have to work with, that we're making these offerings. We're saying, here these things are. I don't need these things anymore. I know you don't need these things anymore. As being enlightened beings, you don't need them. But I am offering to you and offering to all beings that whatever I have is meaningless compared to the blessings that we receive from the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas. So, so we're visualizing these phenomenal things as these objects of offering. One of the things that we do that's very important is to be in a sacred space as much as we can for as long as we need to, in order to be able to develop these practices and so on. We don't want to be in an area where we're getting interrupted with phone calls or busy traffic or people coming and going and questioners coming and going. We want to be in a place that has a solitude to it, that has a degree of isolation to it, where we can take the everyday experiences of life and put them on the side for the time being. We're going to get to them again. We're not annihilating them. We're just putting them at rest for a time being. And we're focusing on the spiritual aspect of developing our spiritual body. So in order to do this, we have objects of our devotion, objects to remind us of what we're doing. So we create an altar. We create a sacred space. We have a shrine of pictures or statues or candles, or making offerings of the water, the light, the candles. So we talk about, we make these offerings, the drinking water, the washing water, the flowers, the incense, the light, the perfume, the scented water, the food, and the music. So all this is being all offered, and we display objects on this altar or on this shrine in order to remind us, to stabilize ourselves as our mind begins to wander, thinking about some of these mundane things that we were trying to marginalize, but they may creep into our mind. But then we see these objects and we remember and say, oh yes, my focus here is for the sake of my spirituality, and these objects are just symbolic of that devotion. So at some point, we may not need these objects anymore, and but for a time being, they're part of the ritual and part of the stabilization of our wandering minds to be able to bring this together. So we don't want to develop an attachment to these things or an aversion to these things, because that can become an impediment to us. We can develop this pridefulness. Oh, I've got this beautiful shrine. Oh, I've got these beautiful pictures and so on. And I need to have these and so on to help me sustain my spiritual practice. For a time, that may be true, but we have to allow ourselves the freedom to be able to release those and to be able to move on without those things, to have, excuse me, to release any aversion that we have to having the attachment to them, to say I need these things. So part of that may be the clothing that we wear, because what we're trying to do is we're trying to purify ourselves, we're trying to purify our atmosphere through all these accumulation of things, but we may want to take our ordinary clothes and put them aside and say that we're wearing something that is that speaks to the practice that we're doing. So, for instance, a lot of us will wear white because white being the color of purity and so on, and that as we are approaching, the stage of being a practitioner, as we're approaching the stages of becoming a yogi or a yogini, the purity is very important for us and so on. In the imagery of some of the Buddhism, we'll see that some of these meditational deities and so on are wearing lavish clothing, silks and beautiful different colors and so on. And they all have representations. They all have meaning. But for us in the beginning, and as we carry on, should be very simple. So whether we're just wearing a scarf or we're wearing certain clothes, they should be special clothes that are clean and that inspire us to be able to remain in our devoted focus of our practices and so on. So this is the exquisite garments that we are offering to be able to do this. And all this arranged in a perfect symmetry so that there is an order to this, there is a process to this, and that we're respecting the process, that it's not just all chaotic and just heaped here and there and so on, that there is a progression that we can recognize. So like I said before, if we fall away from an organization of our mind, of the structure of what we're doing, we can come right back to that structure. There is a repeatable method in which to be able to do this. This is part of the offerings. And then the last stanza of the offerings was, then the vast and unsurpassable offerings, inspired by my devotion to all the Buddhas, and moved by the power in my faith in good actions, I prostrate and offer to all you victorious ones. So this first line, then the vast and unsurpassable offerings, inspired by my devotion to all the Buddhas. So the most important, the most significant of all these offerings is our time, our self, our body, our attention, our focus, that we are giving this, that in order that it may be purified, that our life, our energy, that instead of our energy going around and chasing after mundane things, accumulating houses, accumulating cars, and accumulating relationships and so on, all those things are quite mundane, but that we acquire wisdom, that we acquire compassion, we acquire joy, and we acquire equanimity, that the enlightened mind, this is what we are trying to acquire. So this vast and unsurpassable offerings of our attention, of our time to be able to do that is what is being expressed here. The devotion to the Buddhas, this devotion to the true nature that we have within ourselves. And that this is moved, this is powered, this is supported, moved by the power in my faith in good actions, in virtue, my faith in good actions, my faith that this is going to carry me on, that the faith in karma, cause and result, that this is going to result in bliss. This is going to result in happiness, not just for myself, but for all beings, by recognizing ourselves in this Buddha light, as in this Buddha nature. So moved by this power in my faith to virtue, to good actions, then I prostrate and offer to all you victorious ones. So as we said before, the victorious ones are the ones who have been on this path, human beings who have been on this path, who have purified all the negativities and confusions and all the afflictive emotions and the wrong views, and all these things have been purified, and they become victorious over all of this, and to be able to achieve their status as a holy enlightened being that is within ourselves, and recognize ourselves as that. So this is the offering of the 7 preliminaries for purifying the mind. So we're going through this process, taking refuge and making all these offerings of our mundane possessions, etc., but also our time and our effort and our prayers, all our energy being offered to this Buddha nature that we have right within ourselves. This is what we're trying to awaken within ourselves.
Okay, one thing that I know really stuck out to me that you had said in the unrecorded version, you were talking about with devotion that in order to transform ourselves, that we need to have devotion to what we're doing, and that the time we're giving to it is the most important form of devotion. Which, that part stuck out to me, of like the time I'm taking to practice, the time I'm taking to do these things, of viewing it as a form of devotion or an offering, or framing it in that way was powerful to me, and I never quite looked at it that way. So that was one thing that stood out to me.
Yes, thank you. That's one of our most prized possessions as a human being, that we have this time, to be alive, and so on. And to be able to say, well, I'm not just going to spend that time doing these mundane things. I'm going to spend this time developing my spirituality, because we have this gift of life. And what am I here for? Just to enjoy all these things, which ultimately becomes the suffering of all these things? Or do I take this time to be able to transcend all these things, this mundane pleasures that we go through, that seem to be permanent pleasures, but are ultimately just temporary pleasures? And that at the end, when we pass, none of these things come with us. But if we're developing our spirituality, if we're doing that through the time, then there is something that we then begin to harmonize with, that invisible vibration that we talk about, that is symbolic of that absolute nature that we all have. So yes, so the time that we spend doing that is priceless.
One other thing that you mentioned, I don't know if you'd want to touch on real quick, was for using this in one's practice. You talked about reciting it whenever people can, but also taking time to recite it slowly and contemplate, even if just going one stanza at a time, or in one sitting having one stanza. Something you had mentioned as well, if you wanted to comment on that.
Correct. Yes. Thank you. So yes, so we have a structure of doing our routine practices, and we open with our motivational prayers and so on, and we get to this part where we do the 7-limb prayer, or we're reciting the King of Aspiration Prayers. We're reciting this, and it may give us cause at any given time, any particular time. It could trigger something in our mind, or trigger something within our heart, that we want to spend a little bit more time examining. We want to understand what this is. So these things are these words and so on are triggers to help us to remember those things, to allow these things to come up, to have the karma rise up into fruition, so that we can deal with it. If we just suppress the karma, the causes of karma, suppress our actions, but they come up in inopportune times and so on, we need to allow these things to come up and think about these things, to contemplate these things. So it's important for us to be able to do that. So at any time we can take these practices, take these prayers and use them, but not hesitate if we have a question, or we have a light bulb goes off, we have something that triggers our mind, and then we just sit there and we just contemplate that one stanza, or that one sentence, or that one phrase, or that one word, because now all of a sudden it has a new meaning to us, because we've been doing things, experiencing things, and now all of a sudden it has a deeper meaning, a deeper understanding to us. So allow ourselves to do that. If we are reading this, and reading this very quickly just to read it without any real understanding, we're going to miss a lot of the points behind this. So to read this slowly and deliberately every time we do this can lead to greater understanding, exploration, and so on. So we need to be able to avail ourselves of that. It's very helpful to read this on a routine, this particular prayer, this King of Aspiration prayers, or this King Aspiration of Good Actions, to recite this as often as we can. Maybe in the beginning, you commit to reciting this every day for a month, or every day for a year, for a period of time, to allow more and more of this meaning to soak into us, to be able to absorb what is being said here. And as we go into this further, and as we the meaning of this, as we explore the meaning in subsequent weeks and so on, this will become more apparent how important this is, and so on. So yes, so doing this deliberately with pause whenever we need to take pause to think about these things is part of the process to be able to do this.
Yeah. And finally, another thing that you had mentioned that one could do as part of their study or practice is to make an outline of the points in blue, or the headers, and be able to go through the outline and see what they understand or not, and go back if they need an understanding, but using that as a method you had mentioned as well.
Yes, thank you. That's an excellent point. And as a study guide,
Right.
this translation came from, if you look on the back page, came from the Rigpa translations from the Lotsawa House. So you can look this up on Google. You can go to Lotsawa House, and there's lots of translations. And this is one of the authoritative translations. It's very good. And what they did was they gave headers that would not have been in the original translation in the Sanskrit.
Oh,
They put these headers in blue, and you can extract them from this text, put it on your own piece of paper, and then use it as an outline. And so that, as Matthew just said, you can use that to go through quickly. You don't have to read everything and say, well, do I understand prostrations? Do I understand offering? Do I understand this that comes after that and that comes after that and so on? Or do I not completely understand that? And maybe I need to refresh my memory on this. So there was a particular aspect about this that I haven't really ascertained yet. So doing that becomes a practice, a way in which a study guide to be able to help us to do that. So yes, that's a great tool. So I think this is where we left off. Is that not correct?
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. Then
So
the rest of the video will pick up. Yeah, with the confession.
okay. So were there any other points that you wanted to bring up?
I don't think so. No, I mean you touched on most of what uh, we were talking about earlier today.
Okay. Yeah, I'm sorry that we weren't able to do this for the sake of everybody, but I think we hit on the main parts. We will repeat this again. This is the kind of thing that, cyclically, once a year or whatever, we will come back and we will go through the whole thing because that's the nature of doing our practices and so on. And plus, we went through this a couple of years ago. If you wanted to go back into our the YouTube channel, you might be able to find it there and so on. But more importantly, is for you to take this up now and be able to begin to recite this and practice it. If anybody needs these documents, needs these printed, I can mail them to you, or we can send them through email, and you can request that on our Gmail. Email would be fine. I don't know if in YouTube, if we have the ability to put in documents and that you can download those documents from YouTube. I don't know if we have that ability. But nevertheless, if you request it, we'll send it to you, all these things, because this is a priceless activity that we're engaged in. And there's many great teachers, and this is only one example of many. And what we're doing is just basically introductions to what is a whole great myriad of teachings and so on that are being carried on by many great masters who have been given the responsibility and accepted the responsibility. They've been ordained. They've been through many years of training to be able to do this and so on. So our job here is to familiarize with this, to give you encouragement to take up these practices and to attend the teachings and the practices that are being offered by the lineage teachers. So if you need more information about that, we can give you that. But we are part of the Drikung Kagyu lineage. And so there's websites. You can just put in Drikung Kagyu into Google and many things will come up. But if there's anything that we can help you find, we'll be more than glad to do that. Okay. So then thank you very much. We appreciate your coming. And we will do a short dedication. In the next segment, we went through and we did a brief explanation, a little more of an explanation, I should say, of the dedication prayers. So for right now, we will recite the dedication, the Daikorma prayer on page 20. By the virtues collected in the three times, by myself and all beings in samsara and nirvana, and by the innate word of virtue, may I and all sentient beings quickly attain unsurpassed, perfect, complete, precious enlightenment. May the teachings of the great Trikumpa Ratna Shri, who is omniscient, Lord of the Dharma, master of interdependence, continue and increase through study, practice, contemplation, and meditation until the end of samsara. Om, Ah, Hum. Om, Ah, Hum. Om, Ah, Hum. May my body, speech, and mind become inseparable with the body, speech, and mind of all the enlightened ones for the benefit of all sentient beings. And that little prayer that we just did is a refuge prayer, is a prostration prayer that we recite as we are doing our prostrations. So just help you to connect the dots, so to speak. So thank you all very much.
Yeah, and now the video will pick up on the confession.
Very good. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you.
See you all next time. All right. So I think today it's going to be most useful if I can get through this first part, the rest of page 2 on the 7 preliminaries, and that our practice will suspend the practice for today because what this is really understanding the practice of the Munlam. So it's important to be able to do this. So you can see that this is going to take a few weeks to be able to get through the whole thing, but I don't want to forget doing practice. But today we're going to concentrate on the elements here. Okay. Anybody have any questions or comments before we begin? Okay. All right. So we pick back up talking about confession now as the third part of the 7 preliminaries for purifying the mind. So the confession reads, whatever negative acts I have committed, while driven by desire, hatred, and ignorance, with my body, my speech, and also my mind, before you I confess and purify each and every one. So this is an important element, the confession, where we talk about the four the four powers of Vajrasattva. So the four powers of Vajrasattva is to recognize that we did something wrong and to have remorse for it, to use a remedy or an antidote to be able to counteract that particular event that we did, that non-virtue that we did, to have a resolve not to do it again, and then to have a reliance on the practice to help us to maintain our virtue, but also to, if we fail again and we fall back and do a non-virtue, that we can rely on the practice. The practice will always be there to help us to reinforce and come back to our virtue. So these are the four powers that we utilize in order to actualize the confession, that we have the confession, we recognize that we did something negative, but we use the four powers now to overcome the negative. So whatever negative acts I have committed, while driven by desire, anger, and ignorance, the 3 poisons, with my body, speech, and also my mind, before you I confess and purify each and every one. So, and very often during the time of doing these prayers, if we're not rushing through and we're not just reading them without thoughtfulness about them, there will be times when something will pop up into your mind that you may not have thought about for many years. And then you're saying, wow, every time I think about that, I cringe, that I would do something like that. And this is one of those examples of confessing that and saying, okay, I realize I did that, and maybe I've made amends for it in some way or another. But at the same time, every time I think about that I did that I was capable of doing something like that, it comes back into our mind. So we have to develop a way of being able to let that go, but so sometimes it'll heal, it'll go away, but every now and again, we'll see the scar, we'll feel the scar, and that can be a little bit disturbing to us. But we need to be able to not suppress that. We need to allow that to manifest. We talk about that we need to let our karma ripen. We can't fix something if we can't have it in our means and our midst to be able to fix it. So we want good karma to come up. We want bad karma to come up so that we can fix it through the 4 powers. So we confess that we have these things, these issues that have come up and so on, and we don't suppress them. They let them come up and we heal them through our practices and so on. So as I say, during the time of contemplation, when you're reciting this, these things may become obvious to us. Then the next one is rejoicing. So it says, with a heart full of delight, I rejoice at all the merits. O Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, Pratyeka Buddhas, those in training, and the Arhats beyond training, and every living being throughout the entire universe. So this is rejoicing with a heart full of delight. I rejoice at all the merits. So we're looking at all the things of all the beings, all the exemplars who have been our heroes, the Buddhas, the Bodhisattvas, the Pratyeka Buddhas, and so on, those in training, the arhats, all those, that we're rejoicing at whatever they've been able to accomplish. And then we're looking at ourselves as any one of these or all of these levels that we may have attained or at least had glimpses of, and rejoicing at that. So the rejoicing is a feeling of happiness, a feeling of satisfaction, a feeling of accomplishment, a feeling of confidence. We're rejoicing at this with delight that I've been able to do this, and we're getting a feeling of that because we've accomplished, we have these merits. And sometimes these merits are a little bit abstract, but let me see if I can try and explain this. We do things and overcome negativity. And as we are doing this, it's like putting something in a bank. It's collecting these merits. So how does this work? This works that if you are in a situation that you've been through many times, and that situation has always become non-virtuous for you, you've always reacted to it. So now you're going through the same situation, but you don't even recognize it because of the power of your merit, that you have overcome this, and you don't even recognize that there's a choice for you to do non-virtue. You're just doing now instinctively, you become doing the virtuous thing. So this is relying on merits. Sometimes there will be a situation where you're in a dubious situation and you're not sure which way to go. And sometimes the merit of the things that you've done in the past, not related to this particular instance specifically, but the merit of the good things that you've done has carried you through this dubious question that you have in your mind as to how to react to this. So the merit can happen in that way as well. So the merit is like money in the bank, is like saving for a rainy day, all these different cliches that we might use, that when we need the power of the merit, it will be there in order to help us to overcome that particular rough stretch, that particular rough road, those bad few days or something like that. Which brings up another question or another thought, is that sometimes, we will do something wrong. We'll say something wrong, we'll get angry, we'll do some kind of a negativity and everything. And we may not be able to get over it right away. We've done it, and now we have to get over it, but we may not be able to get over it right away. It may take a couple days. Now, if it takes a lot longer than that, that's another issue. But the point is that even in those couple days, we need to be able to allow ourselves, we're going back over and over and reaffirming that our dedication to the resolve not to do these things again, to using the four powers. And it may take a couple days for us to get over that, but that's part of the process. And we allow that process to manifest. We don't think of ourselves as saying, oh, I did this thing yesterday and it's going to haunt me the rest of my life, or it's going to be a stain on my life for the rest of my life, or something like that. We can get over that. But we have this sense of a guilt, or whatever you want to call it, this emotional response to it. But we have to let ourselves get over it by reaffirming the resolve not to do this, by engaging in the practice over and over, reliance on the practice not to do this again. So it's perfectly natural to do that. If, on the other hand, we haven't been able to get over that, and we realize this was really an egregious thing that we did, we really need to look at our life, and we really need to be able to say, what was the cause of this? What has developed this habitual tendency? What can I do to really change this? And then we really need to engage in earnest in the practices. Maybe we need to talk with our spiritual guides, our teacher, our spiritual friends. Sometimes we need to engage in a conversation outside of ourselves and get a better perspective on what it is that we're doing. And we need to take initiative to be able to do this. So I speak of this as one who has been through all these things. So I understand what this is, and I certainly haven't reached a level of great perfection, but I understand, what we're going through, the changes and everything, and it's a natural progression that we have to allow ourselves to engage in. So by talking about these things to ourselves, by talking about it with our brothers and sisters or to our teachers can help us. Maybe reading a biography on a particular deity may help us. We recognize that. And sometimes that happens if we're actively reading things and so on. All of a sudden, we'll read something that addresses this very point. And you say, well, there it is. And there's that synchronicity of things coming together. In the sutras, it's like that. We can be thinking about something in the sutras, but we haven't been able to organize the thought pattern. But then we're really thinking, and then all of a sudden we read one of these sutras, and there it is, articulated for us. So there's this synchronicity of all the spirituality coming to pass. So we need to allow ourselves to engage in that. And that goes back to the notion of having time, making time to be able to do these things. So this was rejoicing that we can do this, and rejoicing for the others who have accomplished this, having rejoicing for them. Sometimes this may be out of our ability to be able to do ourselves, but we rejoice for those who have, and perhaps through our study and practice, that is going to help us to maintain, to be able to get over that ourselves. So this is all part of the rejoicing. Anybody have any questions about confession or about rejoicing? Okay. So the next one is imploring the Buddhas to turn the wheel of Dharma. So this says, you who are like beacons of light, shining through the worlds, who pass through the stages of enlightenment to attain Buddhahood, freedom from all, I exhort you, all of you protectors, turn the unsurpassable wheel of Dharma. So we're asking the Dharma protectors, the teachers, the Buddhas themselves, who to remain in our midst, to be able to give us the teachings. So whether it's someone who in person is being able to do this, or someone who in person is being able to transmit the teachings to us, or it's something that we're reading and receiving the transmissions that have been recorded through the books or through audio recordings or something like that, watching videos, that we're imploring these Buddhas, these great teachers, these awakened ones, to maintain the wisdom and be able to transmit that to us, who have passed through the stage of enlightenment to attain Buddhahood. So what this is saying, they themselves have had to go through this process. Remember, all this is the human process, is about human beings. So Buddhas are realized, complete human beings. They're not special human beings that just materialized out of the ethers or something like that. They are human beings who have had to work for their purification, who have had to work for their realization, for their experiences, and to work to be able to maintain that purity, that sustenance of being able to help other beings and so on. They've had to work for it. So it says, who passed through the stages of enlightenment to attain Buddhahood. So it's something that they had to work for. We may not know all the details of what it was that they did. It may have happened lifetimes ago. It may have happened earlier in this life, whatever. But we know that it's there. We can see it in our own lives, that there is this steady progression and so on. So many of the biographies of the great ones speak of their lives more specifically. You can see, like Milarepa, who was a murderer, killed people, was a black magician who sought redemption and was able to become a Buddha in his very lifetime, and was able to inspire many, many other followers who they themselves became Buddhas and so on. So Milarepa is the great hero of the Tibetan people. Because of that, he's considered to be like the patron saint, who shows all the people that they can do terrible things, but yet they can redeem themselves through the practice. So the Buddha, Shakyamuni Buddha, we can see his life. We know the story of the Buddha and the changes that he went through, and his yearning to be able to recognize the causes of suffering and what the suffering is and how to overcome the suffering. We can see that, and we can use this for inspiration in our own lives and so on. Our life is going to be somewhat different. Everybody's going to have their own progression and so on, but we can see that the themes that are woven through this are consistent with all the enlightened ones. So, and we need to be able to seize on those opportunities through our stages of enlightenment in order to attain Buddhahood. So it says, freedom from all. I exhort you, all you protectors, freedom from all. It's a very simple phrase, but this is the key element of the right view, freedom. All beings want to be free. All this is about being free from our body, being free from our intellectual mind, and using the spiritual path in order to be able to do that. The spiritual path, being on the spiritual path, is freedom. It is the embodiment of freedom. So it's not something that we have to let go of. It's something that we recognize that we are. That is who we are. It is freedom. To be spiritual is to be free, to be let go. If when we die, we give up our intellectual body, we give up our physical body, and we become pure spirit. And if we're not prepared for that freedom of that spirit, we want to have a body again. We want to have an intellect again. So we come back into this life or another similar life or something like that because we can't deal with the freedom. So we come back into our way. Sometimes the motivation to come back into the body is for the benefit of other beings. This is the work of a bodhisattva. But sometimes it's because we simply can't maintain that freedom ourselves. So the freedom from all implies that this is what the mind of the Buddha is, of what the embodiment of the Buddha is freedom from all attachments, freedom from all aversions, freedom from all the wisdom aggregates or the pridefulness of the arrogance and so on, that, oh, I'm such a good person and everything. It's freedom from all of that. It's freedom from thinking that I have to help other beings, that it becomes, I just help other beings because that is my spirituality. I'm free from the thought of having to do that. I just do it. It's like the sun radiating the light. Just, it doesn't think about it. It just does it. So this is imploring the Buddhas to turn the wheel of Dharma, turn the unsurpassable wheel of Dharma. So the protectors are any of these beings, these enlightened beings who are protecting the Dharma, who are protecting the pathway. The Dharma is the path of being free, the path of being awakened, of recognizing all this as being perfectly natural, and that we are not attached to it, we have no aversions to it. So the protectors help us to do it. So there can be protectors that are Dakini protectors, there are protectors that can be Daka protectors, there are protectors that can be gatekeepers, there are protectors that can be bodhisattvas, and there can be Buddha protectors. So we look at these as all the beings that are doing this. And as human beings, as we are progressing through the path, we become protectors ourselves of being able to produce the printed materials, to be able to talk about the printed materials, to be able to have discussions like this, are all protectors of the Dharma. So by whatever degree we can do that, we engage in doing that. And through doing that, we improve our ability to be able to do it. In the beginning, we may not be very smooth. We may not be able to be good communicators. But over time, we begin to have the right speech. We begin able to have the right phrases. We use to connect the right words. We have the right images and so on to help other people to recognize these things. And it doesn't happen automatically. It's something that we have to work for. We're developing this. So we're using inspiration of our teachers, we're using inspiration of the books and so on, and we begin to bring all these things together. We become the embodiment of this body of work. So when we say Sarva Mangalam, may all be auspicious, that we're saying that all these things that we're engaged in, that all these things may be auspicious for the benefit of the enlightenment of all sentient beings. And may I and all these beings be like conduits of this, that are bringing this forth for all beings and so on. So this is imploring the Buddhas to turn the wheel of Dharma, the wheel of the path, that this goes round, and we're constantly reinforcing it by repeating it over and over and over again. You know, the basic teachings that we go over, Buddhism 101, that we go over and over again. And now we've expanded a little bit. Now the spiral has gotten a little tighter. We're talking more about some more in-depth Dharma practices and concepts and so on. And we keep going around that, and then maybe we tighten that up and go to the next one. So this is all turning the wheel of Dharma, the wheel of the path, that as we increase, as we go further and further up, the circles get tighter, they get more frequent, they get deeper, and that we're increasing our awareness and stability on the path. Imploring the Buddhas to turn the wheel of Dharma, and that we do that, we participate in that. And the next one is requesting the Buddhas not to enter nirvana. Joining my palms together, I pray to you who intend to pass into nirvana, to remain for eons as the atoms of the world, and bring well-being and happiness to all beings. So here we're praying, we're beseeching, we're requesting the Buddhas, the awakened ones, to not to pass into nirvana or parinirvana, not to give up their bodies, to let their bodies go. May they remain the embodiment of the Dharma in order to continue to give us teachings and so on. So we can talk about this, like say with great figures like Garchen Rinpoche, His Holiness Chetsang Rinpoche, many other great teachers, Kenshin Rinpoche, many other great teachers who have come to bring us these teachings and so on, that not to pass away, to live a long life, to be able to do this. And we can say this to ourselves, that this Buddha nature within ourselves, not to pass into nirvana to the point that we're not able to communicate with ourselves, that we're not able to communicate with others. So may we remain as eons, as atoms in the world, that we become Buddhas, that we become active in this. We're not escaping from anything. We are engaging in this. We're not escaping, we're engaging. So this is, and so we do that through non-attachment and non-aversion. We bring it on, and this becomes our work. This is what we do. And so there's no more having to think about it. There's no more contemplation about it. It's just like the sun that is radiating the light. And we recognize that it brings well-being uh, and happiness to all beings. We see that there is a huge difference in people's lives. We see that we are bringing together people. We are feeling better ourselves. That there is happiness within ourselves, happiness within our groups, and so on like that. And when people are having difficulties, we don't kind of run and hide. We find ways to discuss things. We find ways to have conversations about things in order that we may all be able to benefit from the experience of each other and of the teachers, of the Buddhas themselves. And may they not go away. May they remain with us forever. So, the concept of forever is, as I say, a concept. But, this idea of this nirvana, this peace of mind, is like that vibration. We've used that illustration before, that concept, that there's just like a vibration, and we just become that vibration. We just become the teachings. We become the Dharma. We become the pathway. And it pervades all things. So as we are developing our Buddha nature, as we are remembering and cultivating it, that it not go away, that it remain everywhere, that we not get caught up in nirvana. Here's a point. This nirvana, if you remember, nirvana is a concept itself. So we talk about samsara on one side of the hand, and on the other side of the hand is nirvana. So the ocean of suffering is the samsara, and the release of that suffering is the nirvana. But it is temporary. It is temporary. It is part of samsara. It is part of the dualistic nature of ordinary human beings and so on. So, so not to enter into this nirvana, not to enter into this temporariness, but that we enter into this stability of being a human being and being able to bring this awareness, this awakeness to all beings and so on, this state of mind, the samadhi, the state of mind of being free, the samadhi. This is another way of saying this. So by not entering into nirvana, here is saying not entering into a temporariness, but into a everlasting peacefulness. And then the last part here is the dedication. So the dedication is with what little virtue I have gathered through my homage, through offering, confession, and rejoicing, through exhortation and prayer, all of it I dedicate to the enlightenment of all beings. So this is just a summary. This is an affirmation, and this is the dedication. The dedication is the result of all the meditations, of all the practices that we do, that we are not selfishly holding on to them. We are selflessly being generous and giving these to all beings. We are dedicating this to all beings. So the dedication is the realization of the meditation. When we talk about the fivefold path of Mahamudra, and I know, there's a path of accumulation, there's the path of insight, there's the path of practice, there's these different paths, and then there's the path of meditation, the Mahamudra itself, and then the final is the dedication that all this has been done for the benefit of other beings. So if all beings do that, if this becomes the focus of what human beings do, that how transformative this becomes. In this world, in this samsaric world, we may not realize that, or we may not be the beneficiaries of that. We may not see that happen in this world. But in the transcendence of this world, and even if we're in this world, the transcendence of this world, that we may be in the midst of this, but don't even recognize it as the suffering. We don't even recognize it as samsara. And we're doing this for the benefit of all beings. So this is a very abstract idea, very abstract concept. We don't know what the other side is like, if there is another side. The other side is here now. You know, we talk about everything that we need is here right now. There is no other side. It's all here now. This is the reality of things, and being able to see that it's non-dual, be able to sustain that and be able to maintain that. And that wherever we are is the samadhi, wherever we are is the state of mindfulness, of awakeness, of Buddha awareness, Buddha consciousness, Buddha mind. So we're dedicating this. So in this phrase, it says, what little virtue I have gathered through my homage, through the homage would be the prostrations, through the offerings, we talked about the offerings, through the confession was number 3, the rejoicing was number 4, through the exhortation was not to go away, to continue to teach was 5, the prayer not to go away, the prayer not to go into the nirvana, but to remain is 6, and then 7 is the dedication to the enlightenment of all beings. So the 7, as it says, the 7 preliminaries of purifying the mind are all in this dedication. So sometimes you'll in different practices and so on, we may not recite the entire 7-line prayer, the 7-line prayer, so the page 10 and 11 in our book, but we may just do the dedication at the end on page 11. Whatever merit I have gathered through prostrations, offering, confession, rejoicing, beseeching, and praying, for the sake of the enlightenment of all sentient beings, all this I dedicate, is a way of quickly remembering, what this means. But for us to be able to remember it, we have to be stable in what it means. And then we recall it through these prayers. Anybody have any questions or comments about these last few points that we've just made?
My only comment is that your exposition here makes all of this very clear and very real to me.
Well, good, thank you. So you see why we do these things. And the masters have brought these forward to us, and this is great. And I've mentioned before that if you want, if you've got a particular problem that you're working on, write a prayer to yourself. Put down what it is that is causing this problem, what it is that has been the obstacles, what it is that you have used to be able to overcome this, even if it's in theory, that you haven't been able to perfect this, but you think that this is the way that I need to do it. The way it means to you. You may have read it here in the text, but you can't articulate it. You just can't copy it down. But how do I express that in my own life? So write it down your own self. And then if you've been successful, but continue to fail at it, there's been success of being able to overcome this problem, but you're not able to stabilize the virtue of being able to do that. You continually fall. Write that into your prayer. Include that into your prayer. That I can't stabilize this. I want to be able to stabilize this. And then at the end, then do a dedication. That whatever good is coming out of this that I'm writing down, I'm doing this for the benefit of other beings. And maybe this is going to help me to explain to them how I've overcome this one day. One day I'll be able to explain this to them. Or maybe one day I'm going to meet somebody who's going to help me in a way that I haven't been helped before. And I'll be able to recognize that. So don't hesitate to write your own prayers, is my point. So these lines that we have in this text, the blue lines, make up an outline. And maybe you want to do a little study on your own where you just take a clean piece of paper and you just write down these blue bullet points, these blue points, and just make a list of this outline. And it will help you to refresh your memory about what each of these, what these different stanzas are saying. So in other words, you don't, if you're contemplating, if you're studying, you don't have to read every single thing. You can use these blue lines to help you to remind yourself, well, do I understand what this is? If you've understood it, then great. Then maybe you go to the next point, but there you have difficulty. What did this mean? So you go back to the full text and you read that again. You say, oh, now I remember. And it's a way of reinforcing, what you have learned, what you have written down, what you have in front of you, but you haven't been able to really become the full embodiment of. So it's using these techniques that help. So these are study techniques.
Lance, you sort of encouraged me to do that when we do Medicine Buddha, and it has the aspiration vows at the end. At the very beginning, you said that each of us should take those great vows and sort of write down our own version of them.
Yes.
They mean to us.
Did you do that?
I did.
Has it been helpful to you?
Yeah, it has. I still always like to come back to the original text because that's just who I am as a person. But yeah, I think about them a lot.
Yeah, that's really good. And it doesn't matter whether you're, practicing Medicine Buddha or Chenrezig or any other Buddha. It's the same kind of aspiration, isn't it? What's that?
Yeah, I said they all tie together.
They all tie together, yes. That's why we say you know one Buddha, you know all the Buddhas.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's good. Okay. So anybody else have any comments? All right, so we got a little bit of time, so let's carry on now. So we go to page 3 in the text and to the actual aspiration. So this is very short. It's only 3 stanzas, this actual aspiration. So the first part is the aspiration for the purity of attitude. That's what's only 3 parts. The actual aspiration has many more elements, excuse me. So the aspiration for purity of attitude. So it says, let offerings be made to the Buddhas of the past and all who now dwell throughout the 10 directions of this universe. Let all who are yet to come swiftly fulfill their wishes and attain the stages of enlightenment and Buddhahood. So those Buddhas of the past, let offerings be made to them, that we're offering to them what they have done, their dedications, their practices, and so on that have stabilized this so that we can come and hook onto the vibration, to hook onto them. The za, hung, bam, ho, we talk about, to hook onto them. Their offerings be made to the Buddhas of the past. And let those who now dwell, the present, now dwell throughout the 10 directions in this universe. So the attitude that there are beings now that we want to become part of, and that they should be part of us, in our consciousness, in our heart center. They're already there in our heart center. We just don't recognize it. So may our intellectualism catch up with our heart, with our spirituality. Let all who now dwell throughout the 10 directions in this universe, and let all who are yet to come swiftly fulfill their wishes. So all the future Buddhas. So whether it's us that we're looking at each other on the screen right now, that in this lifetime we get ever closer to becoming Buddhas, practitioners, yogis and yoginis, bodhisattvas and Buddhas in the future. May it happen to us later today. May it happen to us tomorrow or next week or next lifetime. That we're all looking at this and seeing all this possibility and seeing all Buddhas out everywhere. As we do the sadhana practices, we're visualizing that all beings become those Buddhas and so on. This is a way of purifying our mind. We see everybody as the same Buddha, and that's what we are trying to see ourselves as. And attain the stages of enlightenment and Buddha. So this is our attitude, that they attain the stages of enlightenment and Buddhahood. And Buddhahood is this freedom, that to be in this samadhi, to be in this state of mind that is uninterruptible. In other words, I can be in this state of mind, we all can be in this state of mind, and this freedom, just peaceful, no thought, but then somebody comes and says something to us, the phone rings or something, and we can talk to somebody. We can engage in a conversation. We can go out and do things, but we're taking that state of mind with us. We're not leaving it behind. We're not shutting it off. It stays there with us. And everything that we interact with, that phone call, with that person that's interrupting, is in the light of that samadhi, in the light of that state of mind. So this takes practice. This takes stabilization through our practices and so on, through the meditation, being able to do this, and it becomes more and more stable. So to attain the stages of enlightenment and Buddhahood. So we do this as a progressive process. So the next stanza says, let as many worlds as there are in all the 10 directions transform into realms that are vast and utterly pure, filled with Buddhas who have sat before the mighty Bodhi tree, around them all their bodhisattva sons and daughters. So as many worlds as there are in the 10 directions. So, the 10 directions, does anybody have a question what the 10 directions are? Everybody know what that is? Who doesn't know? Okay. So the 10 directions. So, these satellites that we're sending up into space and everything are bringing back more information about all these celestial bodies that we could only imagine, are possible up there and so on. And how many other worlds are there like ours where there's beings and so on? Who knows? Just countless, who knows? And may all these transform into realms that are utterly vast and pure, so that despite what they are, this matter, all this stuff is all part of the phenomenal nature. And as being part of the phenomenal nature is the potential for attachments and aversions and so on, all these emotions and all this wisdom as human, as we know it as human beings. But these worlds also have other afflictions, have things, the planets or the galaxies, they seem to be very peaceful. But meanwhile, it's a very chaotic, violent world out there, or universe. And these things are coming together and great explosions are happening. And so it's very violent, so we would see that in our lives as being, terrible, that these things happen, that we're dying over and over again like that. And so these things are happening out in space, out in the universe. So may they all become vast and and utterly pure, and filled with Buddhas who have sat before the mighty Bodhi tree. So the mighty Bodhi tree, this is symbolic of the Buddha who sat underneath the Bodhi tree after going through his starving period where he was renouncing everything, and he sat under the tree and had enlightenment. And figuratively, this is what we're doing when we are sitting in our meditation rooms or in our shrine rooms, whatever, we're on the cushion, we are figuratively sitting underneath the Bodhi tree, the enlightenment tree. Bodhi means enlightenment. That we're sitting under that tree, being protected by the tree of the Dharma, of the 7-limb prayer, that we've just been talking about, is a tree that these preliminaries are hung on, that is our protection, keeping our mindfulness. So, filled with Buddhas who have sat before the mighty tree, and around them all their bodhisattva sons and daughters. So all those who are on the path to become liberated, to become totally free. And we talked about examples of that when we talked about the Sambhogagaya. We talked about the 5 Buddha families of the past number of weeks. So if anybody missed that, and you want to refresh your memory, you can go back to the YouTube, and we've got those weeks where you can, that are recorded, that you can watch those, which were very, very good, about the 5 Buddha families. And on that were the bodhisattvas, the male bodhisattvas and the female bodhisattvas. Around them are their bodhisattva sons and daughters who are supporting and leading the way for all beings to attain freedom, to attain liberation. And let as many sentient beings as there are in all the 10 directions live always and forever in happiness and health. Let all beings meet the Dharma that befits them best, and so may they all they hope for be fulfilled. So it's a question of attitude. May all sentient beings as there are in the 10 directions, who knows how many, countless, live always and forever in happiness and health. So whenever they become manifest in bodies, whether they remain in meditational bodies, whether they become Buddhas, whatever, may they all live forever in happiness and health. And may all these beings meet the Dharma that befits them best. So here the Dharma is a lowercase Dharma. It's not capital D Dharma. So a Dharma is a pathway. The Buddha Dharma is with a capital D and refers to the teaching, to the pathway of becoming enlightenment. But we all have individual pathways for our livelihood, for our relationship with our families, for our jobs, for the people around us, and so on like that. So we all have different needs. We all have different ways in which we express things. So may all beings meet the Dharma, that pathway, that ordinary pathway that befits them best. Some of us are going to have this job. Some of us are going to have another job. Some of us are going to be this age, some other age, and so on. All these things. We respect all of that. And then it says, may all that they hope for be fulfilled. So may all their virtuous wishes be fulfilled. May all their virtues, all their generosity, all their moralism, all their patience, all their diligence, all their wisdom, all their concentration, all that all come together and be completely fulfilled. So whether we can do it as Buddhists, many people, they have different traditions, and the different traditions do not necessarily negate their spirituality. They may be hung up on certain attitudes or something like that, but the essence of what all those spiritual traditions are is the same as the Buddhism. They may not be able to articulate it in the same way that the Buddhists can articulate it. Buddhists may not articulate it the way they talk about it. but we can see that the essence of it is all the same. So may all that be fulfilled. So again, this is a question of attitude. So I think for now, that's it for today. Does anybody have any questions or comments about this aspiration for the purity of attitude? Is this making sense? Yes.
I'm sorry. I remain a little unclear about the 10 directions.
Okay.
I don't get 9 and 10.
Is up and down.
Thank you. That's what I thought. All right.
Up and down. So it's literal points of the compass. So it's looking at the phenomenal world and saying, well, here's the fundamental construct of the 10 directions of the phenomenal world.
Thank you.
Thanks for the question, because if you don't answer the questions, you're not going to know. So there's no bad question.
That's exactly right. Thank you.
Yes. Yes. So has this helped anybody to be able to relate to the big picture and to relate to it in a way of seeing that it's our responsibility, it's our individual responsibility to be able to manifest this picture, to be able to view this, to be able to see what is going on, what this phenomenal nature is, and what our part is in it. Has any of this helped you to do that, or did you already have this, or are you missing it? What do you think?
I think this is terrific. I'm glad we're going over it.
Okay, good. Thank you. Okay, because all this helped me tremendously. All being able, because I'm not that smart. The Buddha was a genius. Buddha Shakyamuni was a genius, and many of the masters that followed the Dharma teachings were geniuses in their own way, and were able to bring all this disparate stuff together in ways that we can understand it. And I'm so thankful that this was there, because I might have had all these different ideas floating around in my body, in my heart center, my brain and everything, but I didn't have a way of making them come together. So all this has really, really helped me. And so I'm very thankful for that. Okay. Well, the next week we'll continue. And as we continue this, I think we'll incorporate some practice in this, where we have some meditation on this and so on. So I wanted to establish this first part of things, because it was very important to do that. I didn't want to have that, continue over a number of weeks, and we needed to keep it together. All right, so if there's no other questions or anything, let's go to our 101 books, and let's recite the dedication prayers. So these dedication prayers, now, as I explained a few minutes ago, this is the most important climax of the practice, of the teaching, of the meditation, of the study, whatever it is that we're doing, because we're doing this for the benefit of other beings. And you'll see that it follows this pattern of recognizing the past masters, recognizing what we're doing now, and recognizing what it is that we are trying to accomplish for ourselves and for other beings and so on. So being part of a lineage, this lineage dedication prayer on page 18 is very important, because we're seeing that there is this continuity of a stream of consciousness that is bringing us closer together to this intellectualization that becomes united, that becomes in union with the spiritual heart center. So we're paying respect for that. We're dedicating this for ourselves and for the benefit of all other beings in doing this. So we recite this in English. So we recite this part. Dorje Chang, Talopa, Naropa, Marpa, Milarepa, Dorma Lorgampopa, Pagma Drupa, and Lordri Kompa. Please bestow upon us the most auspicious blessing of all the Kagyu Lamas. By this virtue, may I achieve the all-knowing state, and may all who travel on the waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death cross the ocean of samsara by defeating all enemies, confusion, the cause of suffering. Bodhicitta, the excellent and precious mind, where it is unborn, may it arise. Where it is born, may it not decline, but ever increase higher and higher. I pray that the Lama may have good health. I pray that the Lama may have long life. I pray that your Dharma activities spread far and wide. I pray that I may not be separated from you. As Manjushri, the warrior, realized the ultimate state, and as did Samantabhadra, I will follow in their path and fully dedicate all the merit for all sentient beings. By the blessing of the Buddha who attained the three kayas, by the blessing of the truth of the unchanging Dharma as such, by the blessing of the indivisible Sangha order, may the merit I share bear fruit. So let me just go over this just briefly, just to remind of certain things. So by reciting the names of the Kagyu masters, Dorje Chang, Talopa, etc. So these are the masters who became great teachers, who had their students, who then became great masters, who had their students, and so on. So this is the lineage. This is the movement of the lineage. Each one of these is formative in this lineage that we belong to. The Kagyu lineage is the oral lineage, is the lineage of the oral teachings, the practices. This is a very important distinction, that we are practicing the becoming Buddha. So that's what the blessing of the Kagyu Lamas, that's the auspicious blessing of the Kagyu Lamas, that we are doing and entering into the oral transmissions, the oral practices. And that all the beings who are subject to birth, old age, sickness, and death, the suffering of samsara, the confusion and so on, that all this is for their benefit. And that bodhicitta is the mind of the enlightened ones, that through the bodhicitta is how all this is being channeled, all this is moving through bodhicitta, loving kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity. And that the Lama, the teacher, wherever they are, we are with them. We make a connection with the teacher. So whether it's a physical connection, or it's an intellectual connection, or most importantly, it's a heart connection. And that we can all connect with the Buddha Shakyamuni. We can all connect with Padmasambhava, Guru Rinpoche. We can all connect with each other and recognize each other as our teachers and the lamas, and we wish this for all beings. And then as Manjushri the warrior, so this was the Bodhisattva Manjushri, the youthful Manjushri, who is like in the college, in the university, who is learning all these different things of phenomenal nature, but all in the light of the absolute nature, that transcendent awareness, that transcendent nature of Buddhahood. So as Manjushri the warrior, who was a warrior who fought against ignorance, who fought against arrogance, fought against delusion, fought against hatred and desire, all these things through loving kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity, the bodhicitta. So there was the aspect of this warrior doing that, who attained who realized the ultimate state, and as did Samantabhadra, the Bodhisattva Samantabhadra, who is the Bodhisattva of devotion. So it's through this devotion that we are doing this over and over again. Follow in their path and fully dedicate all the merit for all sentient beings. And then the blessing of the Buddhas who attain the three kayas. The three kayas is the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. The Dharmakaya, the Sambhogakaya, and the Nirmanakaya. So all this is within ourselves. We have the power for this. The Dharmakaya is the true nature, the truth body. The Sambhogakaya is the enjoyment body of the intellectualization of bringing all this stuff together so that we can understand it within our intellect. And then the Sangha is the emanation body. This is the emanation of the teacher who manifests in a form that we can relate to, that we can talk to, that we can receive teachings for, and so on. So that so the blessings of the Buddha of the three kayas, the physical body, the intellectual body, and the spiritual body. So that's what this refers to. So then we go to the next page, the Dekorma prayer. And the word Dekorma is dedication, is the Sanskrit word for dedication. So the Dekorma prayer. So this is the simple, concise prayer. So it says, by the virtues collected in the three times, by myself and all beings in samsara and nirvana, and by the innate word of virtue, may I and all sentient beings quickly attain unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious enlightenment. May the teachings of the great Trikumpa Ratna Shri, who is omniscient, Lord of the Dharma, master of interdependence, continue and increase through study, practice, contemplation, and meditation until the end of samsara. So by the virtues collected in the three times, the past, present, and future, by myself and all beings, in samsara and nirvana, those that are in samsara and nirvana, who are in this phenomenal nature, and by the innate word of virtue, so this root of virtue, that's this purity that we are seeking, that we have within ourselves to be able to release ourselves from the obscurations that are covering this up, to release that, may I and all sentient beings quickly attain unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious enlightenment. So this enlightenment is the Buddhahood, the Samadhi. May the teachings of the great Trikumpa Ratna Shri. This refers to Lord Jigdan Sumgun, who is the founder of this lineage, Lord Jigdan Sumgun. So Drikung is the village in which he founded the monastery. And the word Pa means that he is the one who did this, the human being who did this, the one from Drikung, the village from Drikung Monastery. Ratna Shri, Ratna means jewel, and Shri means the noble jewel, the noble one, the noble jewel. So it's referred to as the great Drikungpa Ratna Shri, the great noble jewel who brought this. So this is an epithet for Lord Jigdan Sumgun, who is omniscient, who is all-knowing, Lord of the Dharma, so master of the Dharma teachings, of the path of the Buddha, master of interdependence. So master of interdependence means master of phenomenal nature. Interdependence, the multiplicity, not being subject to it by way of ignorance, not being led around by a ring in the nose, but being a master of it and being able to control it and not being able to be controlled by it. We are controlled, master of interdependence. So through all these teachings and so on, we're learning to become a master of this phenomenal nature. We're giving our ego a job. And the job is purification, is dedication for the benefit of other beings, is enlightenment, and so on. So may all this continue and increase through study, practice, contemplation, and meditation until the end of samsara. So we're doing this that we may continue and increase this through listening to the teachings, studying the teachings, contemplating the teachings, practicing the teachings, and having the meditative experience, that transcendent meditative experience, no thought, that spaciousness, being able to attain that until the end of samsara. The samsara is within ourselves. We're not going to be able to fix this whole world. The only thing we can fix is ourselves. We can liberate ourselves from samsara, the ocean of suffering. And that's what this refers to. So I hope that helps. So now we Om, Ah, Hum. This is a prostration. Om, Ah, Hum. Om, Ah, Hum. May my body, speech, and mind become inseparable from the body, speech, and mind of all the enlightened ones for the benefit of all sentient beings. So thank you all very much for this, having your patience and paying attention to this and asking questions and thoughtfulness.
Thank you, Lance.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lance. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
See you all tomorrow.
All right, so we'll see you tomorrow evening. We'll continue our conversation on karma.
Thank you.
Okay.